To start, let me explain myself. I'm 5'7", 113 pounds, and I was 16 at the time of the encounter. I'm a multi-sport athlete, track, handball, volleyball, basketball and hockey, and I have insomnia. This all happened around 2 AM on August 10th, 2019. I had been over to my best friend's place because she had just returned home from a vacation, and she had birthday presents for me, hoodies and gummies if you're curious. I had spent almost an hour there getting ready, and wanted to head back home soon because honestly, my town is scary at night. Drug dealers, rapists, murderers, you know the deal. So I waved goodbye to my best friend and started walking down her street. I guess a party had just let up, because behind me at the end of the road, about 20 or 30 yards from where I was standing, there were a couple of men walking across the crosswalk. They were both pretty tall, I'm guessing between 5'11" and 6'3". The two seemed harmless at first when I looked in their direction, but soon they came to a stop. They were both looking at me. At this point I felt uncomfortable, so I just kept walking. That's when I overheard one of them said, "Hey, that's a girl." At this, I whipped my head around. They were starting to walk in my direction now, and one of the two men had moved over towards the sidewalk, where there was no light. I knew at this point that something wasn't right, and I began to pick up my pace. They were still getting closer. I didn't know where the second guy was, but when I looked back, the first guy was still following me down the middle of the road. I think that they were planning to cut me off and try to trap me between the two of them. The minute I was about 13 yards from the intersection, I started to run, and that's when the yelling started. Oh great, now she's running. I hooked a sharp right and then a left. I could still hear them behind me, and at this point all I knew was that I couldn't stop moving. I had to lose them somehow. I was coming up to an apartment building with a small parking lot behind it. There were no lights. I made the split-second decision to veer off into the parking lot, and I squeezed myself under one of the cars. I don't know how long I waited there. It could have been a minute, but it felt like a lifetime. I watched the two men run past. They didn't bother to check under the cars, which was definitely in my favour. The minute I felt that I was safe, I backtracked and took a different route back to my home. I was too scared to take the main route in the fear I would have bumped into them. I know what I'm about to say is stupid, but I didn't go to the police. I wouldn't have been able to give a proper description of the men, because I hadn't seen their faces. If there's anything I learned from my experience, it's that no matter who you are, you need to be extremely careful. You can think that the part of town or city that you live in is safe, but that really isn't the case. There is no protective barrier to keep out people with bad intentions. Please, whatever you do, watch your surroundings, as your life depends on it. If I had been listening to my music and not paying attention, I hate to think what could have happened to me. I hope that no one else has to experience the fear that I did. It was almost like prey being chased by predators. And to the men who followed me, let's never meet again. 2003-ish, 3 years after graduating, I was working a security job. I'd get off work and it would be 12 AM by the time I'd get home. My friends would all be asleep and I'd have nothing to do. So I would go out for long walks and listen to AM radio, like Coast to Coast. I would also drink on these walks too. The idea of it sounds stupid to me now, but back then it kept me sane. So I'm in the middle of my city's park. I never see people. Maybe coyotes or an owl. Down this dark path that I'm on, I see a guy walking my way. I'm not a small guy, so I was sure I could handle him, so long as he didn't have a weapon. He walked past me and I said, "Sup?" And the way he said "hey" back sounded cold and angry. I chalked it up to him being wary of me as well. I kept walking my way and he went his way. I fair distance away, I looked over my shoulder and saw him just standing there. I didn't like the look of this. It was a casual glance, and maybe he didn't see me look in his direction. I knew the park like the back of my hand, so I took a T by a bridge that had a lot of trees and bushes. I left the path and went into the bush. I sat there and waited. Sure enough, he followed the path after me in a fast pace. But he walked right past the bushes. I waited longer and watched him cross the bridge, and then double back and take the last option on the path. I waited there for so goddamn long. When I decided to leave, I went across the bridge and headed straight home. Never went for a walk at night since. Let's not meet, weird night stalker. This wonderful encounter happened a year ago when I was walking back home from my girlfriend's house. Ever since the first time I walked her home, I made sure always to do it, especially if we stayed out late. I mean, safety first. Plus, I got an amorous hug or a kiss in return, my Achilles heel. But I digress. My house is approximately half an hour walk from her, but I didn't mind one bit. There was always a possibility of getting on a bus, but I love walking, enjoying the brisk air, starry sky, and sounds of silence, stuff like that. That night, however, I wanted to take the bus, mostly because I had sprained my ankle a few days before. Wasn't too serious, but hey, I'd be damned if a sprained ankle stopped me from going out with my lady. We ended up staying longer than usual. It was around 2 AM if I remember correctly, so a bus was out of the equation. See, in my city, the last bus takes off at midnight. So yeah, the night was once again my companion. To get to my house, you have to pass a mental institution. I'm not even kidding. The only way not to pass by is to take a longer route. 30 more minutes of walking. And my foot wasn't exactly in the mood. So, there I am, in the dead of night, beatboxing to a Pentatonix track. Yeah, I remember that part of the dot. Here's the thing, I live here. The institution is like 10 minutes at most from my house, so I've gotten used to it. It's not at all like in most stories, where you hear screams and the ominous fog is seeping out of each crack. Not one bit. If anything, it's like a campus. The ground even hosts a medical school. Plus, they have a pretty sweet basketball court, where people rarely play. I mean, not to insult anyone, but most patients aren't really in shape to play. So, my friends and I spent a lot of time there, and it's safe to say I knew the entire place. Also, that's where I screwed up my ankle. So yeah, I'm walking by and my brain, being the scumbag it is, reminds me of all the creepy stuff that may be hiding within the darkness of the grounds. It contrasted the illuminated street perfectly. Well, perfectly for me to shit bricks. I tried my best to neglect the thoughts, compose myself and walk home as fast as possible. I almost made my way to the bus stop, when I noticed a guy standing there, as if frozen in place. I don't remember much of his features, but he immediately gave me chills. There was no real reason to, though, as he was seemingly not even paying attention to me. He was just standing there, focused on the opposite side of the street. I didn't stop, but slowed down, giving myself time to try and analyze whether the guy was drunk or high or something. I mean, he was waiting for a bus at 2 AM. There was a bus schedule on the stop, so I figured there was little chance of him not being aware the bus wasn't coming. I remember muting my music and putting my hand in the pocket of my pants, positioning my key between my fingers. I just felt incredibly on edge, unable to explain why. I guess I just don't feel at ease in such situations. Who can blame me? As far as I remember, the guy looked normal. He was dressed casually, not as I would imagine a patient from the institution would be. I traced his gaze, but saw nothing on the other side of the street. Nothing. The area was empty, just the two of us. Even as I passed by the man, my pace remained very much the same, not wanting to alarm him or trigger anything. The scariest thing of all, even though he paid no attention to me before, he started moving right after me, right after I brushed past him. He didn't hesitate a single moment, for all I knew. I firmly believe he was able to grab me at that moment, but he just walked behind me. I figured that he would wait until he reached one of the less illuminated parts of the street if he wanted to do anything. It was just too strange of a coincidence, but I had to confirm it. Even though I was not the bravest guy around, I was good at concealing panic. Theatre actually helped me in real life, so I just continued walking as if minding my own business, didn't even look behind me. Since nothing was blaring in my ears and having headphones actually helps isolating sounds and having a better perception of where something is coming from, I was able to hear his footsteps behind me. I decided against going further down the street, as I would usually do, but instead made a sharp turn right into a street with a dead end. Lo and behold, the guy was still on me. Since there was a glass building nearby, I was able to see him losing his balance, probably thinking I'd continue forward before continuing to trail me. Now, before you think, you must be an idiot going into a dead-end street. Remember, this is my turf, for the lack of a better word. I know the layout by heart. Trying not to give out any hints as to what my next move would be, I sped up, as if I had a rocket up my arse, and I hoped that I wouldn't literally have one. Totally neglecting my ankle, I made another sharp turn, making it seem as if I was heading for the building entrance. Instead, I bolted for the small fence and jumped over it, not slowing down until I knew I would be out of sight. Halfway to my house, I looked back and it seemed as if I had lost the guy. I did relax a bit, deciding to slow down a bit, but still trying to get home as fast as possible. That was the only time I saw the guy, and although I vaguely remember some rumours floating around that a few patients had escaped the institution, there was no proof of that, and I don't think I pursued the matter. Besides, as I said, the guy did not look like a patient. Since I had contact with some of the patients in the past, I knew what kind of clothes they were given, and therapy watered most of their reflexes down. This guy was far too sharp. So, bus station guy that made my ankle take longer to heal. Let's not meet. Ever. Or, oh well, I can run even faster now. Take that. Also, here is my attempt to draw the location, so you could have an easier time picturing what was going on. The blue line stands for me and the red for the guy. Oh, and the green is the fence.